Maybe.
That's character.
All right, guys. Good morning. Happy Wednesday. So we have a little bit. I mentioned it to a few of you guys on Monday, but I think a few of you had already left. But we have a guest speaker today. This is kind of last minute. I'll let him introduce himself here in a second. But I chatted with him last week on being a job shadow site for Shauna. Would like to shadow Alan here based on kind of her interest areas. So Alan, when I talked to him, I was like, oh, it'd be great to get you into class and chat about your career progression and how things are going currently for you out in the field. And he's like, yeah, I'm pretty much available every Monday, Wednesday. I start at 9. I was like, perfect. How about next Wednesday? He's like, that works. So Alan's here. We got him until about 8:45, and then you got to head out to work.
I do.
Perfect. So we got him until about 8:45, but he's going to give us a little overview on his background, what he currently does, but then as he's chatting, please come up with questions as well. So for many of you, whether you're going future-wise more like fitness industry or even going more rehab and therapy, Alan's been in a variety of situations and can offer insight into each of those categories. So get comfortable, settle in. I will have you guys do just a short little write-up on things you took away from today. So kind of jog a few notes in your brain, and then all of you do a little write-up on Brightspace for that. But aside from that, just settle in and listen. You don't miss Brightspace,
I
Al?
do not miss Brightspace, not even a little bit.
All right, Alan, got the
All
floor.
right, good morning. My name is Alan. I am a wellness specialist over at Grand Arbor, Vivi, but I do the other locations as well. There's 3 in town, so I'm all over the place, which is fun, but it's also quite annoying to drive around A to B to C. I graduated from ATCC in 24, 5?
24.
3? One of those. And CJ was my instructor, as well as a man by the name of Greg Lanners. I don't know if you have ever met Greg
You
Lanners.
guys got the chance to meet Greg. Peyton had a good long chat with Greg.
Yeah. If you get a chance to
yeah.
pick that guy's brain, you should do it twice. Other than that, just a little I was in the Army for 8 years. That was my first career choice. I got hurt in 2017. I had to learn how to walk, how to drive, how to write, basically start over. I had a TBI. After I cleared through there, I found solace and joy in the weight room. And a couple years after that, I landed in this program, and the rest is history.
And in the Army, tell us a little bit what you did, Al.
I was a healthcare specialist first, and then I was a line medic, and then I was a combat medic, and then I was a field surgical medic. So my career progressed as I went as well. And those are all, basically they just gave me more tools to do more invasive things. It wasn't anything too crazy, but it was a little crazy. So I start today with a wellness specialist. Here's what I want to talk about today with you guys. Communication, overcoming your nervousness, your class engagement, selecting tools and your skill set, and then what is wellness. And I feel like I was kicking this around. I thought maybe I should lead with what is wellness, but I wanted to throw a curveball and put it at the very end, okay? Because wellness is actually pretty vague, and it's very big and it's very broad, okay? So we'll come back to it. The power of communication. So when you are doing one-on-ones, duos, 2-on-1, or small group, up to 5 or 6, class, up to 30, okay? Each one of those sizes requires a different level of engagement, and it gets a little trickier the bigger you get, okay? If you try to solo out 1 or 2 people in a class of 25, the other 20 people are gonna take notice, okay? You don't really want to do that. You want to give it flow, and you want it to feel balanced and welcoming and engaging. But there also is a level of, I like to bring some humor into my classes. So I kind of have 1, 2, 3, 5 that I kind of bounce jokes off of, but it has grown since I started doing that. And that connection and that level of communication is probably more valuable than the class itself for the people that I interact with, okay? A lot of them don't like doing exercise. They're in the geriatric age, but I don't call them that. I call them active aging, okay? It's just a little less abrasive than calling them a geriatric, okay?
How else would you so active age and older adults, how else would you, what other characteristics would you say is common with your typical class participants?
They're very reserved. They're very nervous. Most of them didn't grow up like you guys did, or even me, where going to the gym was a normal thing. Most of them worked or were farmhands, or just exercise was what I did during the day. And I hear that all the time. I did this for 40 years. I don't need to exercise. And you'll learn that exercise and activity are very different. I don't know if you've touched base on the idea that they're two different things, but in my eyes, they're two different things. So there's a lot of hesitation with these people, and they are scared to do things because of, I'm gonna get sore, or it's gonna hurt tomorrow, or I'm not gonna get anywhere fast. And so those are all verbal things that I try to communicate with these people, that, hey, it just takes a little time, you will get better, it will move better, you'll feel better. And now if you can just get them to bite. That's kind of the hard part. Feel free to interject with anything question-wise. I do like to talk, and sometimes I don't shut up. So feel free to tell me, or just shoot up a yo, and we'll go after it, okay? Overcoming your nervousness. I don't know how many of you have actually sat in front of 20, 30 people and had all of them just waiting for you to do something, okay? You feel about this big, okay? And it's super easy for you to backpedal on what you know, what you're confident in, and how you're gonna navigate this class or this program, this training session, whatever it may be. It's very easy to start doing this, okay? But the exposure of that is so valuable that you can't teach it in a book. You need to go and feel that, okay, this is nerve-wracking, I'm nervous, what do I do? And it's a really good experience for you to do. I highly encourage it, even if you completely fall on your nose, okay? Falling on your nose, but going through it is gonna give you something to build on, okay? So the next time you don't fall on your nose, maybe you just trip a little bit. And then you start to smooth it out, you start to smooth it over, and now you start operating on a very smooth, efficient system. But you're not gonna get there without struggling in the beginning, okay? Right? Okay. So engaging with the class. I think that your eye contact, your level of engagement, surveying the room, reading the room, most of the things that I encounter are in an exercise related class. So there's a lot of things that I'm looking for, even though I'm maybe counting reps, or I'm having them breathe through an exercise, or a stretching where we're holding. I'm visually looking around, but I'm not looking to just look. There are little things that I'm looking for across the room, like maybe I know John over here has a rough right shoulder. He's got a rotator cuff that he didn't repair 40 years ago, and he should have, okay? So when he's doing anything in that upper or outer movement, I'm visually scanning to see, is there distress? Or can I modify this movement for just John? There's a lot of little things across the room as I learn my clientele what I'm looking for. It's not just looking to look. And you'll get that as you learn your people, learn your classes, and learn the ins and outs of what you're looking for, okay? So when I write a program, it's head to toe, but every single one has a progression and a regression of that movement, which sounds like a lot of work, but after you get really comfortable with, hey, this makes this a little harder, this makes this a little easier, it comes natural. At least it did for me. But I'm a progression, regression guy. That's kind of where I land. I like science, so I use science evidence-based to create everything that I do. But when I'm surveying and making eye contact with these people, their faces will tell you where they're at for engagement. Their body language will tell you where they're at for engagement, okay? You'll know without even having to say a single thing to them. And then you can see effort, and you could write a book on effort, okay? I would love to down the road, because the PT that I work with, the transitional therapy that I work with, the classrooms that I work with, the one-on-ones, it all comes down to effort, the way that I see it, okay? You can write the best program. CJ and I can sit down and write you the best program in the world. You don't do it, it's just a piece of paper. Okay? If the effort and the execution isn't there, it doesn't even matter. So that's a hard thing on the back end for me working with the clients that I work with, because I can't be that rash. I can't be that blunt. I can't be like, hey, if you don't do this, you'll never walk again. Can't say that. Don't want to say that. I will say, if you don't, it will continue to regress. It will continue to be a problem until you are ready to face it. And this is how we face it. So, yeah. Any questions on any of that? Sorry, I'm kind of all over the place. Okay?
When you have those hard conversations, or say like tactfully blunt discussions with somebody, would you say most of your clientele are pretty receptive? High percentage, all of them, low percentage, or do some put up a wall? What kind of breakdown do you get there at with responsive?
I'll tell you what it looks like. Women, believe it or not, are 900% more receptive than men.
Factual?
100%. My classes are 95% women. The men just don't come. They don't want to do it, and I don't know what it is, if it's a psychological thing, behavioral thing, emotional thing, no idea. But the guys just don't come, and the women keep coming, and they're like, God, we got to stay active, we got to stay moving, and their mindset is so like, we need to do this, and the men are like, I don't need to do this. But there's a really unfortunate flip, and it's usually when the guys start to realize that I'm not as strong as I used to be, and it's starting to get to be too late. Like end of life stuff. Like I can barely stand. I'm having a hard time doing this. I can't even hold my coffee cup anymore because I'm so weak. There's usually a switch somewhere towards the end of life, I'm gonna say within the last 2 months. And unfortunately, I've seen it 100 times. Where the guys will start trying to make what I call a last ditch effort to come back to strength and exercise. And it's unfortunate because their longevity would be much greater if they would have just stuck with it, even on a very minor consistent level. But they don't, and that's unfortunate. Otherwise, those engaging conversations are usually met with denial or I'll put it off, usually. Or complete acceptance and nothing happens anyway. It's kind of a individualistic, everyone's a little different. Some get right after it and most don't though, unfortunately.
Do you as a coach find it hard to keep that level of motivation from your standpoint, to keep trying to get them moving forward? Like, do you ever have more or days that you feel more down or frustrated, or are you able to kind of put what happened maybe yesterday behind you and say, nope, new day, new interaction, new clientele? What's your personal battle?
It's very hard. You get emotionally attached to these people, and I would say that the blessing and the curse of working with the active aging community is they're awesome to work with. They love what they do. They're very engaging. And the downside is you get close enough to someone that you know is not long for the world, okay? I've had them pass over the weekend. I come back to work Monday and they're gone. They fell on Saturday, they don't recover from that, they pass. And it's hard. It's very hard but you have to understand who you're working with and what you're dealing with. I mean, it could happen to anyone. Realistically, you could get into a car accident or something silly, but that community, that group, that's kind of what you're playing with. Then memory care is probably the other component that's hard. I don't know if anyone has dealt with anyone with delirium or dementia, Alzheimer's, any of the above. Depending on the severity, I have some that are 7 seconds. I convey something, I want to try to do something. 7 seconds later, we're right back where we started. So it's incredibly hard sometimes to just be like, compose yourself and not get frustrated, because your brain operates the only way that you know that it does, until you experience someone where the brain doesn't operate the same way as yours. And then all of a sudden your brain and perception, they shift. Because you're like, holy crap, she really can't remember what we did 14 seconds ago. And we're explaining this again. So then you have to learn how to modify what you're doing and make everything easier so that there isn't this huge 10-second explanation to everything you do, because by the time you get halfway through it, it's gone. So that part's kind of hard, but other than that, I try to rinse and repeat every night. So when I come back the next day, it's a different day. I try not to carry or bridge them over, but it's hard. And unfortunately, in my setting, I deal with PT, I deal with LPN, CNA, RN, management, CEOs. I deal with everybody. So it becomes, and I have slides in the future on that, but it gets really hard to keep your identity when you have 5 people trying to tell you what they want your identity to be. And we'll get into that a little bit later. Booty-doo. Selecting tools. So you guys see a dumbbell, you see a kettlebell, you see a band, and you think it's a training tool, but I build a lot of my programs and platforms around the tool that I'm using, okay? And you can use pretty much anything, but you have to be selective and, what's the word? Smart. Picking a barbell for a 75-year-old client probably isn't the way to go unless you know that client can handle that.
What was that at?
A barbell is
Not
definitely the
good?
way to go.
Not good?
You just wait.
I saw.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. I figured you would.
Oh, yeah.
But that being said, there are tools that are awesome for group settings. There are tools that are really hard for group settings. So knowing the ins and outs, the pros and cons to each one of your tools, when you're picking them and getting good at them, can help you in the long run. Being really good with a band, believe it or not, is way better than being mediocre with a dumbbell, in my opinion. The amount of resistance training you can get out of a band, the types of movements you can get, the versatility out of it, for my active aging crowd, can't beat it. The band is phenomenal. You can push it. It's on a variable resistance. Familiar with that yet? Okay. So the band's on a variable resistance, meaning it stretches, it gets harder. Dumbbell is the same resistance no matter what. As soon as it's off the ground, it's 20 pounds. 20 pounds here, 20 pounds here, right? So with that active aging community, they can take it as far as they can. And each person can do it on a band because they're not governed by the weight. So every single person can grab the same band and push it as hard as they can or as far as they can in that group setting, and it's phenomenal. It's hard to beat. But it does also come down to execution and effort and blah, blah, blah. But what I would say is your tool, you need to be the master of the tool. Don't become, this is the tool I do, and let the tool consume what you do, okay? Become well-versed, know the ins and outs of everything that you do. Everything has value, okay? I'm not a kettlebell guy, but I'll be the first one to tell you the kettlebell has a lot of advantages over a dumbbell, over a barbell. They're there, I promise. But it's not my flavor. But knowing the benefit and the value of a kettlebell, knowing the value of a barbell, a band, a ball, a Dynadisc, a balance board, all the things is gonna make you more well-versed. And in your future, whenever you have this come up with maybe a one-on-one 10 years down the road, you might think of it and go, wait a minute, why don't I try this? I did this a long time ago. Would it apply here? Does it make sense here? So you really can't lose by expanding your knowledge base and your repertoire with tools and etc. Moving on.
Back on that real quick, Al, what, in your spaces, so I've never been in your space where you do your coaching,
Okay.
but like, what is your typical toolbox look like? What equipment do you have accessible to you in your various settings?
All right, so we have weighted bar, we have railings, we have chairs naturally.
And weighted bar, you mean kind of like the group fitness style, like 9,
Correct.
12, 15.
Correct.
Like a bar, but
A padded
not a
bar.
barbell.
A padded bar, usually about 4 feet long, give or take. Then we have chairs, Bosu balls, 360s. They're a little different than a Bosu ball. They're a little less demanding than a Bosu, so you can still work on balance with someone who cannot do a Bosu. And then pad, the balance pad, or the RX pad, whatever you want to call it. Dumbbells. We have fitness balls, which seem really weird, but you can really do some crazy things with those. Bands, straight bands, circle bands or hip circles. Noodles, balloons, ankle weights. There's more. I do yard games with lawn golf or whatever. There's a lot of coordination and stepping, and I like it. It's just a fun change of pace. Pilates rings. That's probably about it.
Nice.
There might be more, but and a Dynadisc, the circular air
Knobby
disc.
on one side, smooth on the other.
Correct.
Got it.
Yep. Works great for balance.
Nice.
So yeah, there's a little bit of everything.
Mm-hmm.
All right, what is wellness? In my words, wellness is when you can create an environment for someone and then try to meet them there. So I think the elements of wellness are spiritual, emotional, and physical. And that's kind of where I started this, with it being kind of vague, because when you say, oh, you do wellness, well, what is wellness? What part of wellness? It's kind of all encompassing. I have clients that I go and play cards with because it's companionship and they want emotional wellness. They don't want physical wellness. They want emotional wellness. So I go and play cards with them, or I go on a short walk and we sit and talk the entire time, and it comes back. Part of me feels weird doing it. At least when I started, it felt like I was collecting money for having a conversation with one. But if they're family or they want that, then it's a service that I provide. I don't really get into the spiritual wellness because there's a whole spiritual team at Grand Arbor, and it's not my lane. I try to stay out of it. But when people pass and you're dealing with grieving spouses, you have to, what I would call, not put on a mask, but you need to put up a front, because that person is just grieving and you're either there or not there. You might be in a situation where you kind of have to just embrace that moment, even if it makes you a little uncomfortable, because if it's your client, then, I mean, I always stepped into it. I never stepped out of it. I was always willing to embrace one of my clients if they lost their son or husband or wife or etc. Just, it's a very hard time. So I always leaned into it. Not that I was overly religious with it, but just as a supporting human being, I was just there. And on the right hand side there, so I work for a very large corporation. It's massive. It's half the state. It's more than half the state of Minnesota, and it's in the Midwest. It's everywhere. They merged with Walker Methodist, and now it's even bigger. But that being said, there's a lot of overhead. When I mean overhead, I mean overhead management. So when you guys are going out into the career field, unless you're doing it all freelance, where you're renting a space or you own a space, you're probably going to work under someone. Okay? And I struggled with, and I talked to CJ about it over the years, my own vision of what I do and why I do it didn't always coincide with the business end of where I work. Okay? That's just a very honest thing to say. It's not as easy as you think. Here, sitting here today, you're going to get out there. You might conflict over services that you do. You might conflict over not services that you do. And it's everywhere, in my opinion. But moving on, we're almost done. So if you're ever going to do a Q&A, this is just something that I run into in classes, where I get people that are, well, this really hurts me. What can I do for this? I always say two things. I'm not an MRI, nor are my eyes. I can't see what's actually going on. It could be this, it could be this, it could be this. I leave it very vague because I don't actually know anything, but I want to try to help someone in that environment. Okay, so I keep it very vague and very open. I don't say it is this and you do this. I don't have a licensure to do that. And that comes under scope of practice. Okay, but I want to try to help the people that I work with. So I try to understand as much of everything as I can. So when I have downtime, I'm not looking at YouTube videos on some weird thing that happened earlier this week. I'm going through the movement processes of the rotator cuff. I want to understand what affects which for rotator cuff muscle and what movement does this, why does it counterbalance this, and it pulls and push at the same time. I just want to know, that's me though, I try to understand every joint, everything to the highest extent that I can. But that's where I nerd. That's where I nerd out, but that's okay. Common questions. You're gonna want to have a handle on what you think is going to be asked. And so like, if you're going into a class where the average age is 60 to 75, what do you think is probably the most predictable question you might get after the class? It's done. You're picking up stuff. Everyone's coming over saying, hey, thanks for the class, blah, blah, blah. And then one person walks up with a question. Okay? In that information, you could probably go through a couple questions just off the top of your head of what you might get. Okay? I always preload things like that just in case. Hey, I got really sore last week. I don't want to do it again. What do you think? I get that question all the time. And I'll say, you do what you want to do, but if you stop, you're going to get sore again. If you stop, you're going to get sore again. It's just going to keep going in a circle for you. So if you build some consistency, that soreness should go away. But that's just me.
What are some of the other common questions you might get, kind of in your day-to-day?
From residents and clients? What dumbbell do you think I should use? What weight should I use? I don't know. What's the goal? Is the goal to get stronger? Is the goal to just move? Is the goal to just be here? Like, it's that one gets really convoluted really quick. But I always tell them, you want to do the hardest movement. You want the weight to be challenging for the hardest movement, because if it's easier for the rest of them, you're going to get every rep. And I think getting the reps is more valuable than trying to overload each one. Because I have, unfortunately, some people that have 6 sets of dumbbells around their chair. So when they're doing bicep curls, they get the heaviest one they can do. And then when I move to the next exercise, now 30 minutes is not a long time for a class. So when I move to the next exercise, it needs to kind of be a smooth transition. But when they're changing tires, per se, every exercise, it gets kind of hard. So
break that down just a little bit, Al. I think that's a good, take just a minute and like chat on what you just said right there of like, pick the dumbbell that's going to be correct for like the most challenging exercise. So like give us an example of say like 4 exercises and how you might recommend them.
4 exercises. So let's say the tool today is dumbbells. We're gonna have curls. We're gonna have both supinated and pronated curls. We're gonna have front raises. We're gonna have lateral raises. And then the last one is gonna be a curl to press. Okay? So if we looked at all of that, the 2 exercises that I think fall under, these are going to be the hardest 2, curl to press, primarily because of the overhead component, or a lateral raise. Okay? And again, for the shoulder component. So if I was looking at it, I would govern my weight to what I know I could do. Because I can curl probably, well actually, not me personally, I can overhead press a ton more than I can probably curl. But that's me. Okay, I don't train biceps. I think they're disco muscles. We'll get into that maybe never. Disco muscles.
Wow.
They just look good. They're just
Love that.
whatever.
Yeah.
No functional properties. I'm just kidding. So when I'm looking at it, I know that I have to govern my weight to tailor the hardest movement. Meaning, if I can overpress 70s, I can't curl 70s. So now my weight needs to come down. So what can I curl? 35s. Okay. So now to do overhead presses, do I increase the amount of reps? Do I increase the tempo? Do I slow the tempo? How do I do it to make this hard at this weight. So then I can spread the challenge across all of my movements based on the one movement that it's actually challenging for. Is that kind of what you're asking?
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Okay. All right. I think I'm pretty near done. Oh, final takeaways. Seek feedback. Reflect on your own performances. You are going to have things that you do that suck. You're going to try something and it's going to not work at all. You're going to shake your head. You'll be like, wow, this is embarrassing. I can't believe I tried to do this. This is not working. Okay? It's a good learning experience though. Like I said, way in the beginning, falling on your nose is pretty valuable if you can actually take a step back to learn from it. Okay? Personal goals kind of goes in that. Being able to adapt, that's kind of the progression and regression thing. If I have someone that cannot do a certain exercise, I try to pick something on the spot that they can do to still be engaged in the class, because it's so they don't just sit there and wait for me to get to an exercise that they can do, which can be annoying if you're that person. Next time you're doing a group exercise down in the lab, just stop and watch. And it gets awkward for you to sit there and be like, oh, everyone's doing something that I'm not comfortable doing. So I try to be very on the spot with an adaptation and progression or regression to keep the engagement of everyone that I'm doing. Because you'll see them. They'll stand out like a sore thumb. If you're scanning your audience, they're not doing anything. You'll see it instantly. And then you can kind of inquire why you think that, or even ask them after class, what's going on? Did something hurt? Did blah, blah, blah. The more you understand, the more you know, the better. And then about me, I kind of touched on this in the beginning. I think barbells will always trump kettlebells. I don't know an Olympic event that has a kettlebell. Just saying.
Alan, we're gonna leave that out.
It's
It's an
all right.
ongoing debate for us. He loves his barbells. I like my kettlebells.
Yep. It's a love-hate relationship.
Yeah, such is life.
Any questions? Sorry, I talked a lot. I rambled a lot. And some of it might not seem very partial to you, but I didn't think I'd be in this setting either. I started at the YMCA training athletes, and I hated it. I don't think I'll ever go back to athletes. I did private athlete training in private gyms and the YMCA with youth conditioning and other things like that. And I don't think I'd ever trade the old people that I trained for any athlete ever again. I like the crowd that I'm in. I like the niche. Not saying there's anything wrong with athletes. I'm telling you, I didn't think I would end up where I am. Because I wanted to do athletes. I wanted to do the high intensity, the very meticulous programming. And it's not all it's cracked up to be, in my opinion. Yeah.
I was going to ask, why did you switch from athletes to?
So the biggest component was because at Grand Arbor, it was Knut Nelson when I got hired. And it came with a full-time job with full benefits and full retirement, which you guys might not understand how valuable that is. But it's incredibly, incredibly valuable to have benefits, to have retirement, and to have a wage that's competitive in the area. There's three things there that I don't have to pay for because of where I took that job. If you do it on your own, you have to supply your own retirement. You probably have to find your own insurance. You're probably going to pay more for that insurance if you're doing your own personal training in a private setting. So there's pros and cons to everything that you do in your future. But that's why I chose Grand Arbor, was because it gave me a massive safety net. And it's hard to beat it.
Other questions, guys? Got one more. What are some of the characteristics of your older adult clients that do really appeal to you? I know, like, you kind of alluded to a few throughout the day, but like, what would you say are the things that you like about working with them?
They appreciate everything. They're very real people, and they're very they're there. They're in that moment. They're not on their phones. They're not distracted by the world. They're not what I would consider pretentious, where they're great to you, but the second you turn around, it's not great. They just love being there, and it's on their calendar. It's something that they're doing today. Now, for you and me, we kind of just go, here's my checklist of the things that I have to do. I have to work, I have to do this, I have to go to the gym, I have to do that. Great, I go to bed next day. For them, there might only be 3 things on that day, and you're one of them. So when they come, they're happy to see you. They want to know how you're doing. They just want to see you happy. It's just an incredible experience that you can't, I don't know, you have to kind of experience it. You have to feel it, you have to see it. You won't find it in a textbook.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us a little bit of a rundown of your typical weekly schedule? Just kind of like what your days that you work, what your hours are. You can get into some detail if you want on like what your typical day looks like, but just kind of general schedule.
So I start at 9 o'clock every day so that I can drop my son off at school. And that is a personal choice. Normally I would start at like 7:30, but I have chose to start at 9, but that pushes all of my days later. Today I get done at 6:30, Monday is 6:30, Tuesday is 4, Thursday is 6, and Friday is a half day. So I get done at 1. I do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Today I have 11 classes and 2 transitional therapy sessions today. So today is very much A to B, A to B, A to B, A to B, eat a lunch, A to B, A to B, A to B. So I never talked about planning your day and time management, but boy, oh boy, do you need it. You need it, 100%. If you can come into your day knowing what you're gonna do the entire day, your anxiety and your stress and each thing that you're gonna do is down because you know what you're doing. And you can be confident in what you're doing. If you have no idea what you're doing, you're gonna be behind the 8 ball every single time. And it's gonna catch up with you. You're gonna start to hate what you do, and it's not what you do, it's not, the fault isn't there. The fault is your planning. You know, you're blaming the wrong thing.
So you're looking at your day. You've got 11 classes, 30-minute classes.
Some 45.
Okay, and then a couple transition therapy sessions. So your goal then is go into the day and like, I've got all 13 of those items ready to go. You've got your class laid out, which I want to come back to that real quick in a second, but you've got your classes of what each day looks like. You've got it organized. That way hopefully you don't go into one class and it's like, well, I'm accidentally starting the wrong program that I intended for the other class, and you've got it planned out. When you program for your classes, do you try to do like a 4-week period, an 8-week, a 12-week? Do you try to build that out? I know this could be a whole, we got about 2 minutes for you to answer that, Al, but it could be a whole separate program design discussion, which
it is.
We might do that next fall.
Yeah.
But brief answer on that.
Program design is very much alive in the industry that I work in. My classes are registered 3 months at a time. So if you sign up for my class, you're going to be in there for 3 months. Over the course of 3 months, I challenge you to increase in weight. But if you don't, that's okay, because I'm going to overload you in either time under tension or reps over that 13-month period. So I look at it and I see month 1, the goal is to get to this, whatever it is. It could be increased time, it could be increased rep, it could be both. Each month progresses on top of that. So that by the time we hit that 3-month end, you have gotten stronger either in capacity or endurance. So, and I take that approach to almost everything I do except my neurological and my rock steady, which are Parkinson's.
We'll come back to that.
That's a whole animal that I didn't
Yeah,
even talk
that'd be
about, because I'm certified in Parkinson's and treatment for Parkinson's, and that is very eye-opening and humbling.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely come back to that in the fall with special populations. That'd be great.
Yep.
So that's what I think is another cool takeaway from Alan's approach is like, I mean, essentially you're programming as you would anybody else, as you would might an athlete, as you might a general population middle age. It's just customized to A, the equipment you have, B, who your audience is.
Yep.
So instead of doing a barbell back squat, it might be a banded squat or a B stand squat or something like that. It's
Mhm.
still a squat. It's just
Yep.
tailored to the person and the equipment.
B stance, chair stand.
Yeah,
Mhm.
love it.
Mhm.
It's great.
Yeah.
All right.
They hate them, but they're great.
Any final questions for Alan? Excellent. All right, we'll wrap right there. Give him a hand, guys.